Have you ever met someone who could make you doubt your own sanity? Who accused you of things you knew with absolute certainty you never did, but said it with such conviction that you started questioning your own memories? Jung discovered that these people aren't just toxic. They are psychological predators who operate through a specific mechanism that can destroy your mind in a matter of weeks. And there's a sign that appears in the first few minutes of interaction that reveals exactly who they are. If you don't know how to recognize this sign, you could become the next victim of one of the most destructive forms of psychological abuse that exists, because these people don't just attack you, they rewrite your reality. Jung documented a clinical case that completely transformed his view of psychological predators. An apparently balanced individual who, in just half a year, managed to devastate 3 relationships, destroy the careers of 2 colleagues, and drive his own brother to a nervous breakdown, all while maintaining the appearance of a concerned and well-intentioned person. And the most terrifying part? Jung discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a recurring pattern, a specific type of personality he began recognizing with alarming frequency. What Jung discovered goes beyond academic theory. Research in behavioral neuroscience demonstrates that during intense psychological projection episodes, the prefrontal cortex deactivates in the same way as in delusional disorders. The brain literally reconstructs the perception of reality. The person isn't consciously lying, their brain has genuinely altered their perception of reality. That's why they're so convincing. They sincerely believe their distorted perceptions because their neural system has been hijacked by unconscious content. But here's the real danger. They don't just see you incorrectly. They convince others to see you through their distorted lens. It's like a psychological virus that spreads through social groups. Think about the last time someone accused you of motivations you never had, emotions you never felt, or intentions you never possessed. If they did this with absolute certainty, immune to any evidence you provided, you were experiencing what Jung called shadow projection in real time. The warning sign appears when you notice a complete disconnect between how someone describes you and your actual internal experience. They attribute thoughts, feelings, and motivations that exist nowhere in your consciousness, and they do it with such certainty that you start questioning your own reality. This is psychological gaslighting at its most sophisticated level, not conscious manipulation, but unconscious perceptive manipulation that can drive targets to genuine psychological breakdown. But shadow projection isn't the only dangerous sign Jung identified. He discovered something even terrifying. What happens when these projectors unconsciously recruit others into their distorted reality? Jung called this group contamination, when entire groups begin seeing the world through one person's projections. Dr. Leon Festinger explained how this happens through cognitive dissonance. When someone presents their projections with absolute conviction, others feel psychological pressure to align their perceptions with the projector's certainty rather than trust their own contradictory observations.
This is how families turn against scapegoated members, how workplaces mob innocent employees, how communities destroy individuals based on projected accusations that have no basis in reality. One comment from our community captures this perfectly. It's terrifying how someone's false narrative can spread faster than the truth, and suddenly you're the villain in a story you never wrote. Another person shared, "She turned the whole community against me. I ended up in a psychiatric ward because I couldn't understand what was happening to my reality." The projector becomes the center of a psychological storm, unconsciously organizing others to attack the very qualities they cannot accept in themselves. If you're watching this and recognizing someone in your life, comment "toxic" below. Sometimes just acknowledging these patterns can be the first step toward protection. Jung mapped 5 infallible psychological indicators that expose destructive shadow projection. First, absolute certainty about your motivations. They don't say, "I think you might be." They say, "You are," with complete conviction about your internal states and character. Second, immunity to contradictory evidence. No amount of explanation or clarification can shake their perceptions. They interpret your attempts to correct their misperceptions as further proof of their accuracy. Third, emotional intensity disproportionate to evidence. They have strong emotional reactions to perceived slights that others find minor or non-existent. Their emotional intensity reveals the projected content, not your actual behavior. Fourth, consistent victim narratives. They consistently end up in conflicts where they're innocent victims of others' malice. The cast of characters changes, but they're always the wronged party. Fifth, recruitment behavior. They subtly try to get others to see you the way they do, often through seemingly concerned conversations about your character. When you see these 5 indicators together, you're not dealing with simple misunderstanding. You're facing unconscious shadow projection that will escalate until it destroys something: your reputation, your relationships, or your sanity. Shadow projection follows a predictable escalation pattern that Jung documented through decades of clinical observation. Initial phase, emergent projection. Subtle accusations that don't match your reality. You dismiss them as misunderstandings. Phase 2, certainty solidification. The projections become more frequent and certain, despite your corrections. Phase 3, perceptive distortion. They begin interpreting everything you do through their projection filter. Neutral actions become evidence of malicious intent. Phase 4, social mobilization. They begin sharing their concerns about you with others, always from a place of apparent care. Phase 5, collective contamination. Others begin seeing you through the projector's lens. You find yourself defending against accusations that seem to come from nowhere. Phase 6, systematic isolation. The group organizes around the shared projection, systematically excluding you for qualities that exist primarily in the projector's unconscious. Understanding this pattern can save you years of psychological damage. The key is recognizing phase 2 and extracting yourself before the projection gains collective momentum. But Jung discovered an even more dangerous psychological state: ego inflation. While shadow projectors are unconsciously dangerous, inflated individuals are consciously convinced of their own righteousness while being completely blind to their shadow. The inflated person doesn't just project their shadow, they identify with archetypal energies that far exceed their personal capacity for integration. They become possessed by the Savior, the wise one, or the righteous judge. Unlike obvious narcissists, inflated individuals often appear spiritually evolved or morally superior. This apparent elevation makes them infinitely more dangerous because people willingly submit to their authority. Warning signs include never doubting their own motivations, interpreting disagreement as evil, and extraordinary charisma combined with rigid thinking. Perhaps the most alarming sign Jung identified is what he called archetypal hijacking, when someone loses their individual identity and becomes a channel for transpersonal energies beyond their capacity to integrate. You can recognize this when someone's personality seems to disappear, replaced by something ancient and impersonal. Their eyes change, their voice changes. They speak with authority that doesn't belong to their personal experience. The hijacked person experiences extraordinary certainty. The normal ambiguity of human consciousness disappears, replaced by absolute conviction that can be extremely persuasive to others. But archetypes contain extreme polarities. The same energy that produces saints also produces fanatics. The person experiencing archetypal hijacking will inevitably manifest its shadow aspects, often becoming the very thing they claim to oppose. Now that you can recognize these dangerous signs, How do you protect yourself? Jung developed a psychological defense system that is simple in theory but devastatingly effective in practice. Step 1. Trust your internal reality. If someone's perception of you consistently contradicts your internal experience, trust yourself over their projections. Step 2. Don't try to convince them. Shadow projectors and hijacked people are immune to contradictory evidence. Attempting to convince them often strengthens their projections. Step 3. Limit information sharing. Don't give personal details that can be twisted into evidence supporting their projections. Step 4. Document interactions. Keep records of conversations and events. Projectors often rewrite history to support their distorted narratives. Step 5. Seek outside perspective. Check your perceptions with trusted people outside the projection field. Step 6. Withdraw when necessary. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play. If someone shows multiple dangerous signs, strategic withdrawal may be your only protection. Remember that case that changed Jung's understanding of psychological predators? Jung eventually realized that this individual's shadow projections weren't random. They were systematic attempts to avoid confronting his own capacity for the very behaviors he saw in others. The individual couldn't tolerate knowing he was capable of manipulation and cruelty, so his unconscious mind projected these qualities onto everyone around him, allowing him to feel pure while unconsciously acting out the very behaviors he condemned.
This is the tragic irony of shadow projection. People become the very thing they most fear or hate, all while maintaining complete unconsciousness of their own transformation. But here's what Jung discovered that can save you. Conscious awareness of these patterns breaks their power. When you can recognize shadow projection, ego inflation, and archetypal hijacking, you're no longer vulnerable to their unconscious influence. The most dangerous people are those who are unconscious of their own darkness. But the moment you become conscious of these patterns in others and in yourself, you step out of their psychological jurisdiction. As one commenter powerfully shared, after you've experienced this a few times, it becomes a blessing in disguise. Just dust yourself off, thank the universe for giving you clarity, and move on. The real ones come into your life, and life gets so much simpler. Jung spent his life mapping these dangerous territories of the human psyche, not to create fear, but to create freedom. Freedom from unconscious manipulation, freedom from projection fields, freedom from being recruited into other people's psychological dramas. The most dangerous person you'll ever meet isn't the obvious aggressor. It's the unconscious projector who will make you question your own reality while maintaining complete innocence about their destructive impact. When you encounter someone who shows these signs, remember Jung's words, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. People who cannot accept themselves completely will inevitably make you the repository for everything they cannot bear to see in themselves. Your protection lies not in fighting their projections, but in maintaining conscious awareness of what belongs to you and what belongs to them. That consciousness is your shield against the most dangerous psychological forces in human relationships. Have you recognized these patterns in someone from your past? Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes recognizing these signs can help others protect themselves. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video helped you understand something you've been struggling with, subscribe for more insights into Jung's psychology that can transform how you navigate human relationships. And remember, the moment you can see the pattern, you're already free from its power.